Michael Ball, how are you?
I'm very good.
There are so many stars of show business, but there aren't many stars of the musicals, and you've managed to do that, haven't you? You've managed to create this character that everybody seems to love.
Oh, that's nice. Well, I know what you're saying. Not many people come out of musical theatre anymore and make a success in other areas. I think that's down to the fact that the shows that came along when I started out, it was all about the show, it was all about the ensemble, it was the shows were about the sets, the directors, and they weren't kind of star vehicles. And if it hadn't been for aspects of love and Love Changes Everything being a hit, I would probably not have broken out into the wide world.
Musical theatre really seems to have changed, doesn't it? I don't know whether I've got it wrong, but they're kind of going more towards the show being the star, as in ABBA and Mamma Mia, Queen for We Will Rock You. There aren't many traditional musicals like there used to be.
What I think they're doing, people are trying to hedge their bets now. It's so expensive to put on shows, and they kind of think, okay, well, if we can put together a show that is comprised of the music of ABBA's back catalogue or Queen's back catalogue, or opening recently Rod Stewart music, then they feel that they've had a hype already. People will know the songs. If they're fans of that artist, they'll be more inclined. Madness just did it as well with Our House. Because to actually open in a brand new show with unknown music and it be an unknown quantity, it's really difficult. The West End is not in the healthiest state at the moment.
It's a real shame, isn't it? Because the shows are brilliant, and there's so much money goes into these musicals. I mean, we're talking millions of pounds. I mean, if you look at the successes, I was reading on Broadway.com yesterday that Mamma Mia made $998,000 last week.
Whoa.
That's big money. Yeah. There is money to be made, but it's getting people in, and the tickets are very expensive.
But not in comparison to New York. Where you're paying over $100 a ticket. I mean, that's an outrageous amount of money. Here, the top price is, well, I'm saying 40 quid. That's a lot of money to go out. And people, I suppose if they only go to the theatre once or twice a year, they're going to spend that amount of money. They want to know they're going to go and see something that is a guaranteed hit, that has a track record. Hence, Les Mis is still running, Phantom of the Opera is still running. Those shows, or a lot of revivals, I think we know the music, we're going to like it. And the shows that have opened in the last couple of years that they spent a lot of money on, and they've lost a lot, like Le Carver, Lautrec, the list goes on of ones that closed, and some, frankly deserved to. Some were not good shows. Notre Dame de Paris springs to mind. I didn't get it. Just didn't get it at all. And a fortune was spent on that. And because it had made so much money around the world, they were able to finance it to keep it open. I probably said something terrible there, and you loved the show.
No, not at all. I was smiling in one way because, as I say, there are so many successes, but there are far greater failures these days.
And people used to wear that on Broadway. There wasn't all that you try out of town and so on, but shows would go on, and if they closed in 2-3 months, okay, there'd be another one waiting in the wings to come on, and they'd try it. This just isn't the case now.
When you said what you just said, I was thinking about Michael Crawford, who is a bit like yourself, really. I mean, you two are the only big stars of musical theatre, in my opinion. And he just bombed on Broadway. Yeah. The show was just criticised.
Dance of the Vampires.
Yeah, they said he looked like somebody in drag, Lily Savage in drag. I mean, they were absolutely cutting about this show. Do you, as a performer, know when you're going into a bad show? Can you feel it, or can you feel the success right from the start?
Well, touch wood, I've never been in one. I think the biggest risk I took was doing a Stephen Sondheim musical, Passion. And I did that for a reason. I really wanted to work with Stephen. I knew that the show... I was amazed when Bill Kenwright suggested that we do it and put it on in the West End, because I knew it just wouldn't appeal to the mass of public. Sondheim doesn't. You can get away with doing him at the Donmar Warehouse, you can get away with doing him at the National, one of the subsidised theatres. Some of the earlier stuff will go on to provincial theatre, but in the West End, it's really hard. You won't find a long runner. So that was done purely for myself, I think, and I did my 6 months there, and I loved doing it. But to answer your question, nobody knows. If something, I remember when we first started doing Les Mis, someone said like, that they're auditioning for this new musical. The RSC are doing it. Didn't know they did musicals. Yeah, and it's based on this really thick, depressing book set in not the real revolution, but a revolution that was a little bit on in Paris in the 19th century, written by Victor Hugo. I went, that sounds like a recipe for a real smash hit. I thought, everyone thought it would die a death. We opened, and the reviews were scathing and absolutely dreadful. But for some reason, word of mouth came out, was circulating, and they were queuing around the block to come and see us when we were at the Barbican Theatre at that stage. And then Cameron Mackintosh had the decision: do I ignore what everybody is saying, which is that this is going to be a monumental flop, or do I take the punt and put it into the West End? And I remember he was looking for the theatre to go into, and Andrew Lloyd Webber had just bought the Palace. And in his mind, Phantom of the Opera wasn't quite ready yet. So he bought it, obviously, because he thought Phantom would go in there nicely. So, he said, OK, well, you can put Les Mis in there. He thought, great, 5 months of rent, and then it'll be out, and I'll have paid for the refurbishment of the Palace. 18 years later, it's still going strong.
It is an incredible show. We're here today for the hour with Michael Ball. He's got a new album out. We're going to play a lot of stuff from that, but we're also going to play some of your greatest hits, and we're going to find out about your life. We don't know a lot about you. That's the thing I was thinking about driving here today, that you're such a big star, and you're so popular, but we don't know a lot about your childhood. We're going to find out about that next. And we're going to talk about things like, would you actually put money yourself into a musical? We're talking about the risk. And that's something I find interesting, because I think in my experience of seeing most of the shows and talking to the stars, I don't think I would, because there doesn't seem any rationale to it these days. For example, We Will Rock You, which is one of the greatest successes in the last couple of years, was slated by the press, yet it sells out every night.
But, that's down to the fact that it has an extraordinary fan club, but based on the fan club of Queen. You've got one of the greatest rock bands in the history of rock, with an enormous following, and I'm not seeing the show, so I don't know what it's like. But I would imagine it's visually very stimulating, and you're hearing those tunes, and quite often with shows like that, you'll get a lot of repeat business. People going, I'm going to go every week to this, or every night sometimes, if they can afford it. And it becomes their thing, their show. They have to be there, and they feel almost like they're part of the cast.
Well, let's play a song now. Let's hear one of my favourites. This was an album you did a few years ago, and you sung a song from Rent, which is a lovely song called Seasons of Love.
Yeah.
I'm interested to talk to you about your style of voice. We'll do that next, because you've changed slightly from some of the old albums. You seem to have kind of brought it in a bit. And I think you're really popular. I love it when you do those big songs, the big ballads and whatever. The new album is great because it's so different in a sense that it seems to have been brought back. We'll talk about that next after we've played the song from Rent. It's called Seasons of Love. Okay. It's working.
Good.
It's a nice song, Seasons of Love from Rent. It's nice, that, isn't it?
Yeah. I remember when I first saw it, and it opened Act 2, and everyone's sort of like a chorus line across the front of the stage. And I thought, this is actually probably the only really decent song in the musical, for my money. And I thought I'd give it a bash.
I think you sing it brilliantly.
Thank you.
I was talking to you before we played the song about the new album. It's called A Love Story, and we're going to play a track from it next. But you have changed. Is that deliberate, or am I reading more into this than there is?
I think I'm maturing, I think. And I think I understand the medium far better. You do it every time you record. The difference between making a record that people will sit down and listen to as opposed to making a cast album or performing or singing on a stage is you're not trying to hit people in the back of the stalls. You're not trying to overemphasize the song that you're saying. You think of a microphone, like we're talking here into these microphones, that basically is where someone's ear is when they're listening to an album. Now, if you're singing a song and you have to like scream down their ear, there has to be a reason for it. There's got to be a reason to belt, and it's discovering this technique and this voice that makes it more intimate. And it's the difference between stage acting and film acting. That's the only the way I can compare it. And with this album, it kind of has a theatrical idea, almost theatrical conceit, in that I wanted to tell the story of a love affair and use songs from various areas of music, but songs that most people will know. All the best songs have been written about love. All the best musicals are written about love. Basically, love makes the world go round. So when doing this, I wanted it to have a far more intimate and a far more subtle edge to it.
And it is subtle, and I like it. It's very different. It's almost jazzy in places, isn't it?
Yeah. There was, I think it's sort of, it has a continuity to it. You know, they're all songs from the same record. But when you choose songs like I Wish I Were in Love Again or Me and My Shadow, which I sing with Antonio Banderas, it's you know, you've got to have a bit of a jazz out on it. But then when you do the lovely folk song Time in a Bottle that Jim Croce had a hit with, it's just a slightly different style.
It's an interesting story about when you recorded this album, because you did it on Broadway, didn't you?
Yeah, I was there for the blackout.
And that must have been interesting. I can't imagine a worse place to be in that kind of situation, because there's nowhere to go, is there? Presumably if there's no power, nothing can open.
No, nothing, but every show closed down. The televisions didn't work, telephones didn't work, no lights, no air conditioning, no refrigeration, no traffic lights, no subways. Now, you know New York, you walk out on Times Square at night and it's brighter than daylight. Well, to walk out there and have, first of all, the first thing you notice is the sound. There isn't any. There's always this background hum when you're in New York of all the machines working and all the electricity around. There was nothing, not even cars driving because of the traffic lights not working. So all you could hear were people talking and laughing because they couldn't get out of the city. When you realised that you were at least outside, you weren't stuck in a subway and you weren't stuck in a lift. Some people were stuck in lifts for the whole night. When everyone realised that this wasn't an attack, that our lives were going to be safe, but this was going to be a long haul, we didn't know when the electricity was coming back. This atmosphere descended, which would never have happened before 9/11, but this atmosphere descended of people looking after each other, and all the crowds who'd come in to see shows in the theatre, no one got the hump. They were walking round, laughing, joking, drinking like you wouldn't believe, because it's really hot and really steamy August in New York.
Yeah.
And food was being given away because it was all going off because the refrigerators didn't work. Everyone was making to every hotel and every bar they could, trying to find places to sleep and to hang out. So little parties, little impromptu concerts were going on. And it was to stand in the middle of Times Square with this crowd of people about 10, 11 at night and to see the stars. It was mind-blowing.
I don't know about you, but when I go to New York now, every time you see a plane fly over, if you're studying Times Square, you think about what happened on 9/11. Was that your initial reaction when the power went off? Could this be something bad?
Everybody's without exception thought that. They thought, first of all, when the power went off, I thought, well, this is localised. When I realised it's actually the whole of Manhattan, and then it was a bigger, I thought, this is, you don't conceive it can actually happen. You know, who's forgot to feed the meter in New York, in the whole of the Eastern Seaboard? And for a moment, everyone was thinking, well, this has got to be, you think, okay, they've done this to take down the power to early warning systems, or something is going to be happening to keep people down in the subways. I really did, and everyone did. And it wasn't until word, and it was very slow that word filtered through because there was no access to any communication. But word eventually spread that we were okay, and it was you know, someone had forgot to feed the meter. George Bush hadn't paid enough.
Incredible.
It was I tell you, that 3 days, one of the best 3 days of my life, to end up then making the record with Antonio, getting it made eventually, and then hanging out with him and Melanie, and it was just brilliant.
We should say that Antonio's in a musical, or was in a musical called Nine, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He's now left.
I saw him do it a couple of times, and also while he was doing that on 47th Street, directly opposite, Melanie got herself into Chicago. So they were the king and queen of Broadway for a while.
I was really lucky to see that the other week, actually, and she was brilliant in it.
You saw Melanie?
Yeah, really good.
I'm so glad you said
she
that.
was really good.
What a clever girl, eh?
She's not a brilliant singer.
She can't sing, she cannot dance, but there may as well be nobody else on that stage. She acted the socks off everyone, put a different twist and a different dynamic to anybody else who I've seen do the role, and was brilliant. Absolutely. Talking to her afterwards, and she's going, "Oh, Michael, I was really nervous you were in." And I said, "Yeah, you do musicals." And I can't really use this. Well, I'll use a different word than the one she used. She said, but when they asked me to do this, I said to Antonio, and he said, I'd be mad to do this. And my management team said, Melanie, don't do it. You shouldn't do it. And everybody I knew said, don't do it. They're all going to go for you. The critics will hate you. And I said, Sodom. Yeah. And I did it. And Michael, there's nothing they can do to me now. I've done everything. It's true that kind of last bastion to fall to her to have a success in was musical theatre. And who'd have thought it,
And the great thing about it was you knew you were watching a big star.
Absolutely.
It was the atmosphere in the theatre that you knew you were in the presence of someone great.
And you also know that there's a load of people who are sort of over into musicals, sitting there seething, going, why the hell has she got this part? It's not fair. She can't sing it. She's not as good as blankety blanket you've never heard of before. And you're going, well, she's there because she's pulling the punters in, and she's good. She's great. It wasn't, and it could have been bad casting. It could have fallen right on its face. But because she cut it, I was really proud of her.
Absolutely. It was a great show. We're going to play that song now with Antonio. What's it called, and are you pleased with it? Is it everything you wanted it to be?
It's more than. It's called Me and My Shadow, as everybody knows. He makes me sing in Spanish at the end.
How was that?
I have no idea what I'm singing. He could have written anything. I have no singer. I have no idea what I'm singing, but I sang it well, in whatever accent it is. And because of the atmosphere of the day, and the nightmare of trying to get it made, it was the most relaxed, fun session I've ever had. It's great.
It's a great song. It's with Michael Ball and Antonio Banderas. How are you meant to say that?
Antonio Banderas.
Oh, on the end. I like that. We're here today with Michael Ball. It's an exclusive hour special, and we're really, really lucky to get him for the hour, because you don't do a lot of in-depth interviews about yourself. We know you as the performer. I'm going to talk to you about the fact I can't stand you because the women like you in a little while from now. It still annoys me after all these years. But I want to talk to you about you as a child. What were you like, and were you born singing? Because I've said it to all the musical stars I've spoken to, that to have such a great voice, you can't really be trained to do that. You've got to have something in you. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think I was always surrounded by good music and good singers. I took an early interest in the theatre and in musical theatre. And I actually was one of those kids. I just always was singing, just to myself, and never joined a choir or any of that kind of thing. I liked story songs. I liked emotional songs, even as a little kid. I don't know where it came from. No idea.
What kind of a child were you? Were you precocious? Did you always want to be a star?
Gorgeous. I was lovely. I was a blonde, curly-haired moppet.
Lovely.
What was I? My mum, not precocious in the sense of, Violet Elizabeth Bott.
Look at me. My name's Michael. What's yours?
None of that. But I kind of had an instinct for entertaining. I was quite sort of funny, and I always knew when to go out and when to come in. It would never be, right, you're showing off now, slap legs and up to bed. I'd leave them wanting more. And I loved being, funny and being the focus of attention, and, I was a really happy kid, really, really happy kid. Had a great upbringing. And I'm really, really blessed by that, because there are so many people who didn't. And all the stuff that you so often, none of that ever touched me. So I was very blessed.
How do you get here today, sat opposite someone as ugly as me, being interviewed for an hour? I mean, did you...
He's lying to you.
I'm gorgeous. That's what I tell myself. Anyway, was it easy for you?
A face only a mother could love.
Thank you. I've been insulted by professionals, Were you given the right opportunities? We know that you had some great shows. Phantom and Aspects were brilliant shows, so that gave you a platform to be big. But how lucky were you in getting there? I mean, what was it, a huge struggle? Some stars talk about they had to work, 20 hours of the day.
Yeah. Mine wasn't a struggle to get the parts. Mine was a struggle just to keep grounded, actually. I had when I first went into Les Mis, I got really sick during it, and that caused me to have a complete lack of confidence. I had glandular fever, which turned into ME, and that caused me to have this terrible, debilitating tiredness, which translated into me having panic attacks on stage. I then lost all my confidence, and I could no longer get on the stage. I'd turn up at the theatre and go, I can't be here, I'm going home now. And eventually I walked away from the show and said, I can't do this. I can't take the pressure of it. I'm not enjoying it. It's costing me too much. And it took me going away for 9 months and literally being on my own for that whole time. I didn't seek any help. Probably I should have. But I sat alone in my flat for 9 months and just tried to get my brain back together and my physicality back together. And eventually a call came from Cameron Mackintosh to try again, to go in and take over in Phantom. But to play Raoul, so the pressure, it was the biggest hit show. It was the first cast after Crawford had left. And he said, look, it's the biggest show, so you're not worried about you having a flop. The pressure's not on you because the pressure's on Phantom. Come in and just, you can do it, we'll be there for you. And that was the beginning of my client. And it was hard, I've got to admit. It was, my job is to make this look easy, to make it look like I've never worked hard in my life, that it all comes really simply and naturally. That just doesn't happen for anybody. Whatever is going on, there are troubles, there are problems getting there. And so, yeah, I was never short of work. I was short of the capacity to fulfill the work and to enjoy the work.
ME is a stress and pressure-induced illness, isn't it? Yeah. Was it just too much too soon to be in such an enormous show? Was that it? Was it, or was it the difficulty of the songs?
No, I don't think it was anything really to do with the show necessarily. It was to do with me. I wasn't looking after myself. The show was it was a big old show, but it's not, Valjean is the hardest part. Marius is a tough role, but I was 22, I should breeze it. And it was just, I don't know, my body said, you're not doing this right, you're not looking after yourself, we want out of this. And it was that thing of being very public. I used to honestly think, if you ever have a panic attack on stage, and you suddenly, the beginning of Empty Chairs at Empty Tables would start playing up, and I'd be holding on to my chair, white and green and sweating, and knowing it's that awful moment where you're not Marius, you're Michael Ball on stage about to play Marius in front of people that you don't know, and you're probably going to muck it up. And what appears on the outside, I would get through the show, and some of my best performances would have appeared to come from it. There was a level of sensitivity to it that previously I didn't have. But on the inside, you just feel totally exposed and vulnerable, and you want to die or run away. And it was all I could do to not run off the stage. So knowing that I was going to have that happen to me every night, and it got worse and worse, more and more were coming, I just took myself out of the situation and said, I can't actually be in front of people anymore.
We'll talk more about keeping your bottle in a moment from now, because that really is the key to being a successful performer, isn't it? Being able to control the anxiety and the nerves and everything. Let's play a song from Les Mis. Bring Him Home, I think, is just a lovely, lovely song. Probably one of my favourite, actually, from the musical. And you sing it really well. Let's have a listen to that. Bring Him Home. We're here today with Michael Ball for the hour, and we're going to talk to him next about keeping the nerves under control. I really love that song, Bring Him Home. It's such a passionate song.
Yeah, I remember when we first heard it, because when we were rehearsing Les Mis, it was a long rehearsal period, 11 weeks, and it was because they hadn't written half the show. And Trevor Nunn kept us doing these trust games and communication skills and improvisations. And we're going, look, we open quite soon, can we do some work? And they hadn't written it. And in Claude Michel-Schoenberg walked in, and they knew they had to write this number for Colm Wilkinson for the character of Valjean, and they'd been working away, and finally they came in with it. It was just myself, Francis, Raphael and Colm sat around the piano, and Colm reads music and was singing it, and it was extraordinary hearing him do it for the first time live. The next day he did it in front of all of the cast, and the first time they'd heard it as well, just with the piano, and he finished singing, hit that long note which he can hold for about a week and a half at the end. It's just, I don't know how he does it. And he finished. There was silence in the room, and finally one guy at the back went to Trevor Nunn, Trevor, you said that this musical was fundamentally about God. You didn't say he'd be singing the 11th hour number, which I thought was really cool.
That's a brilliant line. I like that. One of the best musical experiences I think ever was the show that was done at the Royal Albert Hall, the Dreamcast of Les Mis.
Oh, what an
Which
evening.
was, even just to see it on video, I wasn't lucky enough to be there, but just to watch it, you can see how brilliant that show is just by
how lucky it was that happened. Up until, I think, quarter of an hour, but we were rehearsing that thing because it was for cameras as well as for sound as well as for the audience in there, and it was awful. The dress, you have never seen anything like it.
In what way?
In your life. No one knew none of us knew how to do it.
Right.
It was a promenade production. The cameras are arguing with this one. We couldn't hear the sound. It was all going wrong. It was feeding back. The lighting was non-existent. Sightlines. It was. We literally finished with quarter of an hour before the audience were coming in.
And there was no set or anything. This was just you stood at the front and sing.
And we're basically winging it. So we're all off stage afterwards going, well, we've just killed the show then, haven't we? We'll be ruining this show. We're 10 years on, and we're going to kill it stone dead here. And we all walked out en masse. And you've got 250 previous members of the cast doing the ensemble pieces. Lots of different principals from different productions taking their roles, all in costume. And we walked out, and I got goosebumps thinking about it. This roar from the audience as it started up the beginning of it, and we just went, something really special is happening here, and the show just flew by, and everybody's level of game was raised, and I've never been so proud. It was fabulous.
And presumably working in the Royal Albert Hall has to be the greatest venue ever. I mean, I don't know of a more beautiful surrounding to perform.
Nightmare acoustics. Really? Yeah, terrible, really terrible. I've done my own concerts there a few times, filmed there as well, and it can be a great place to, depending on how you configure the stage, because it's very high and you've got all those boxes around you, and you know that the people in the boxes are just that one step removed from being really involved in the show. People in the ground section and the tiers around the fun, but it's all those boxes around, and the acoustic is a nightmare to make. You can have it sounding glorious, you know, dead centre looking at the Royal Circle, and no one can hear you up at the side. So you have to work really hard to make it work.
We were talking about nerves earlier, but leading to that is something about the perfectionism that you have to do a show like that. I mean, what do you do? Do you walk around the auditorium and listen to the band and go, no, there needs to be more sound there needs to be louder there, softer? I mean, because at the end of the day, the thing that always amazes me about people like you, there might be a million people working behind you, but at the end of the day, they're going to go, Michael Ball's
it's
no
my
good.
fault. Absolutely.
They're going to reflect directly on you if the show is not a success because they couldn't hear it or whatever.
Yeah. You have to learn to delegate, because you can't be everywhere. You can't. With shows I do, my own concerts, you know, I'll stage them myself, and I'll talk it through with the lighting guys and with the sound guys. But ultimately, you have to trust them, because if you're on stage, you can't stop in the middle of although I have done, and go, I'll do it nicely, but do you know what? I can't hear myself. and if I can't, I don't know if you can. So you stop. You can make it into a joke. But you do have to, and you have to change it for every venue you go to, and you have an hour in which to do it before they come in that night. So the pressure's on. You have to surround yourself with the best people you can.
I've always thought being on stage, particularly in a musical where there's little of your personality able really to take over the show. In your own show you can stop it, but I always think when there's those numbers where you're stood stage centre and the mic goes and you're still singing, nobody can hear you, what the hell do you do? I mean, that presumably must be your nightmare.
Yeah, and it happens. What you do if you hope someone else is on stage and you sing into their microphone in their head.
Start singing to their head.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly. I've done it loads of times. There was one gig I did, the very first ever Music of Andrew Lloyd Webber's. It was before I did Aspects, and it was Sarah Brightman and myself. And we went out we were doing it at the Barbican Hall, and I had one of these head mics on, and halfway through me doing what's his name from Jesus Christ Superstar? Jesus, I'm overjoyed to meet you face to face. Herod's song.
I see.
So I'm doing that song, and my mic goes.
Yeah.
So some little bloke runs out with a hand mic. So I'm then with this hand mic, and that's fine, you know, I do the rock bit. I've never sung with them before, but that's fine. And then they do the intro to Evita, and on is coming Sarah Brightman. I then have to run off. She's coming on in this enormous bloody Manuel frock with all the Justice of Windsor's jewels, looking at $1 million, which is roughly what it cost. And she comes sweeping onto the da 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 da. Meanwhile, I'm in the wings, and they're trying to change my microphone. And they're putting it in there, and I said, well, you've got to test it before I go out, because I'm going on to do High Flying Adored. And they tested my mic, but as she opened her mouth to sing, I know it's even you think it's strange, my voice comes out going, and I'm not singing into a bloody microphone for anybody.
Oh, I wish we had a tape of that.
It was sensational.
Oh, fantastic. Did the audience laugh?
Oh, they wet themselves. And this is her big entrance and her first notes out of her mouth.
Oh, that's a great story. I love that. I was just thinking about going to the nerves again. Frank Sinatra once said that he panicked about the fact that he couldn't deliver how people wanted him to deliver, because everybody knew how great he was, and the fact that he could sing live. And that's something that's compliment to people like yourself as well. Most stars, particularly the pop idol generation, can't sing live. They prove it. You see them live on TV, can't sing. And he always had this nerve before he went on that it might not happen that night.
Absolutely.
He may just end up just not being able to do it.
And it does happen. You know, there are nights when you go on and you've got a cold, you've got something wrong with you, and you just know you're not playing with 100%, and you overcompensate. You then oversing, and then you damage yourself for the next night, and so on. It's a vicious circle. And also, I think you become your harshest critic, don't you? Everyone says, "Well, we didn't notice a thing," but I'm going, "What? I sang like Joe Cocker." What are you talking about? And it is you are your toughest critic. I am, certainly.
You presumably have to be a psychologist to calm yourself down and get yourself...
I think you have to be a psychopath to do the
gig. We're going to play another song now. I've got nothing to say to that. I couldn't possibly comment. We're going to play another song now. I'm going to play If Tomorrow Never Comes, which is something quite different. It's a pop song written by Garth Brooks, who is a legend in America. I think the biggest selling artist ever, or something like that. Not really well known over here, but this is such a great song, and you did it and did it so well. Why did you choose it?
I chose it because I was making an album called This Time It's Personal, and it was taking quite a lot of country, American new country songs, which I think are great. They're very similar to musical theatre songs, in that they have a great melody and a lyric that tells a story, and also the song For Personal Reasons. My other half, Kathy, and I, when we were in New York, this song was a hit over there, and it kind of became our song, really maudlin and morbid. But and so I kind of recorded it for her.
Let's hear it now. It's a great song. We're here with Michael Ball. We'll come back in moments with our remaining moments. We're got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about where he goes next. Just huge success with the tour, and Chitty as well. We'll talk about that after If Tomorrow Never Comes. It's a lovely song. It's called If Tomorrow Never Comes. We're here today with our remaining moments with Michael Ball, who is without question the greatest musical star in a lot of ladies' opinions. and I'm not so sure whether they even hear a word you're singing sometimes.
Really?
Yes. And it rather bugs me in a way. You know, I spend all my life and career trying to be good and excellent, and just because I have a funny colour hair, nobody wants to know. You go on stage and look like the little boy, the cutie looks and all that, and they all want to know you. What's going on? I mean, you know...
Hair dye! It's
just... I don't think you need to touch ginger hair. I think you just need to see it as something that's a lost cause.
It's a nice feature.
What is this about you and the ladies? I mean, you sell out wherever you go. You've just done a huge tour, and the reaction is incredible to you. I mean, firstly, do you have to work on your appearance? I mean, you know, are you on...
Well, yeah, of course I take care of... I mean, my inclination is to be the biggest slob on earth. It really is. I've got to be honest with you. And when I'm not working, it would be really easy to do that, to think, you know, I think we'll have another curry tonight and another few pints and sit in front of the telly. I'm not like... I'm like everybody else in that regard. But I you know, I don't always manage it, but I do try to appear my best when I'm performing in public. And your thing about the women and so on, who are just great. I mean, it's sometimes people will try and ridicule and take the mickey, and they're sound ladies. They really are sound girls. And I think it's because I'm not worried. I don't think it's anything about the way I look. I don't think it hurts, but I don't think it's about the way. It's the songs I try to sing, and the stories I try to tell on stage and in concerts. I take people on a little journey, and I'm not afraid to wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm not afraid to show emotion and to empathise with anything that may have happened in their life. All songs are soundtracks to our own lives. You know, everybody has got the first dance the night they split up with the woman who was the greatest love of their life, and so they played Billie Holiday until 6 in the morning drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels. You know, we've all been there. So, and I've no problem actually doing that. Those are the songs that I've always gravitated to, ones that tell their story to me, have a resonance in me, and those are the ones I sing, and I know that they have an effect on them.
You're an incredible personality, and I think that's another thing to do with it. You're not scared of talking, and you have an ability to communicate, and I think that's something they like. You're approachable. I think that's why they probably like it.
Yeah, okay.
Some stars, you can't really get close to them or get to talk to them or have a conversation.
If you knew some of them, you wouldn't want to. But, yeah, I mean, for instance, when I was doing Chitty, for the first time in a long time, everybody knew where I was going to be every night at the stage door, coming in and coming out at regular times. So every single night, there would be a crowd waiting for me to go in and waiting for me to go out. And people would say to me in the theatre, "Oh, doesn't that drive you mad?" And I went, not in the slightest. You get to know people. It's you get to know their stories. You get to understand what they like about you, what it is that you're doing right, what you're doing wrong.
Well, it's one word, isn't it? Mortgage. I mean, these are
you're so cynical.
Well, no, but really, these are the people. I totally agree with you, because there's so many stars who try and deny their success.
Yeah.
I did an interview once with a very famous Neighbours star, and she was only known for Neighbours. She's over here now doing other soaps and stuff, and nobody really knows her other than for her role in Neighbours. And we sit down together to start the interview, and she said she can't mention Neighbours.
What?
And I thought to myself, well, what am I going to talk to you about then? And it's great that you're willing to admit what you do, because some people do try and say, "Oh no, I'm not that person," or whatever. But that's what makes you successful. That makes you your money, isn't it?
But and also fulfills me. It means that I can do the things that I want. That I can make the music that I want to make. I don't understand people who are in denial about their back catalogue. You know. Some things are better than others.
And also you haven't been in Neighbours, so you've nothing to be embarrassed about, really, have you?
Done Coronation Street, though.
You mentioned Chitty. We'll talk about that in a bit. Chitty, first of all, I mean, it's incredible success and a very, very expensive toy.
Most expensive, yeah.
An incredible show that is just so magical for children. I mean, I sat there, and it's in the best venue in the world, the London Palladium, which has just got to be a dream anyway. Yeah. It's such a big show, and you have a car that flies. I couldn't work out how it was done, and I've noticed most tricks. It's brilliant how they do that. And how much did it cost again?
More than me.
I never thought I'd hear that. It was worth coming out of your mouth.
It was, what did they say? It was something like £750,000 just for that one bit of trickery.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I mean, it was the most expensive show ever mounted. It's 6.5–7 million, I think it cost. But it's one of those shows where it actually is up there on the stage. Every penny is up there. I'm still amazed by the success of it. It was fantastic response to it. And
did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I had a great time. It was hard work, the hardest I've ever worked. I've never danced before. All the musicals we were talking about before, first of all, they were through-sung musicals. This is a book musical. And I've never done musical comedy. And I've never danced a step. So, really good casting, I thought. The only thing going for me is I could do the accent better than Van Dyke.
But something I've talked to a lot of performers about is this repetition of doing it night after night after night. How do you keep it fresh? Because everybody's going to be looking at you. I mean, I know it was a great cast, and it still is a great cast. But at the end of the day, you're the headliner, Michael Ball, in this show. They're coming to see you. So you've really got to give it your all every night. Yeah. How do you keep it fresh, particularly on those 2 show days when it's the same thing?
It is hard. That's where being a professional is, whether it's all about being a pro. It's as simple as that. And you know, opportunities like that don't come along that often to star in the bigger show at the London Palladium, and you can never take something like that for granted. That audience coming in, the vast majority, it's the first time they've seen it. They've forked out a lot of money to be there, and you have a duty to them, and you're really lucky to be in that position. So there's never any reason to give anything less than 110%.
It is an amazing show, as I say, but there was an unfortunate incident where you did a press night with Prince Charles and the car broke down. I don't want to bring this up to embarrass you, but how did you feel? I mean, on all the nights that could have done, really?
Oh, I had the best night.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because if you'd been when it goes screaming and shouting, I'd have been disappointed.
No, I have the best time. What was scary, though, what happened with that, because it had to cancel the show, is you've seen the show, so the car when it's being chased by the ship, so she hadn't even flown by this one. The ship is coming behind us, and this is like a ton of stage scenery. And the car hit the ship, and the ship wobbled forward, nearly fell on us, then fell backwards, and seriously nearly killed a stagehand. Just clipped her head and just missed hurting her. So as we're going along, oh, chitty pretty chitty bang bang, chitty bang bang, we're hearing this explosion going on behind us, and terror in looking in the wings, and everybody, I can't see behind me, so I look round, and eventually I see this thing behind me falling over. Oh, I kept singing.
Did you really?
I got to my applause point.
What a pro.
My fine four-fendered friend. All the other kids are screaming, truly scrumptious, having a nervous breakdown. And I'm going, fine four-fendered friend. And we then go, what? The curtain comes in, and I was really shaken, obviously. So the only thing we could do is go to the royal room and meet with Prince Charles and Camilla and have a few chars to say, you'll never guess what you missed. Talking through the show. He just thought it was extraordinary. He was loving the show, and what a shame. What a shame it hasn't gone on. It was absolutely marvellous.
How do you cope with it? I mean, we've talked about pressure a lot in this programme, but I mean, when you have royalty, in which you've had many, many times, I mean, does that add an extra strain, or do you not think about it at all?
Not at all. A panther's a panther. You know, some people say, don't tell me who's in the audience, I don't want to know. There are a couple of people, if I know about, then I'll go, ooh, that's exciting, and I've got to work really hard.
Sue Pollard, Joe Pasquale?
Absolutely.
Those kind of people.
Well, I probably couldn't go on if they were.
No, I wouldn't blame you.
The tension. There was one show in Les Mis early on where Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney came. Why they were in those seats, I don't know, but they were in the front row, right on the left-hand side of the Palace Theatre. And it's big old place, you know, big high thing. The whole show is directed directly to him. So it's Paul McCartney, look at me, I'm in the back and over here. It was brilliant. The whole thing, the bows, everything. We were obsessed with the fact that he was in.
I shouldn't tell you the story. I'm going to tell it, though. Ken Dodd will hate me for telling this, but he told me a story yesterday that he went to see My Fair Lady at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, and he always wears his cap so nobody knows who he is, and he got in fine, nobody noticed, and he went for his drink at half-time, came back in, and everybody started clapping and cheering. So he thought, oh, how could they know it was me? So he starts waving up the top. He only notices behind the Queen had come in and sat down in the royal box. I just thought it was a wonderful story. I can imagine people. He must have felt so stupid, but it's an amazing story. Very finally, let's talk about Broadway, because it's just the most amazing place to go and see. What about to perform? Is it better than here? What is the deal?
What can I say? It's brilliant. It is very different from here. The theatre community is very different. I think people are far more aware of what shows are on there, and because the theatre district is much smaller, the theatres aren't so spread out. And there's a lot more interaction between all the different houses. You know, you get the Broadway Show League, so everyone plays baseball against each other, and Broadway Cares is very active and so on. And the audiences, they're really vocal. If they like you, they'll let you know. If they don't, they'll let you know. And you know, the buzz of waking up in the morning and going to work like you're in a Cagney and Lacey episode. It's great. It's great. I love the place.
Is it better than the West End?
Of course not. You can't compare them. I'm happy in both.
Where would you like to go next? It's an impossible question, but there are so many incredible shows. I don't blame you, to be honest with you. Say it for me with the hour. Is there any dream role that you would want now? There's so many shows coming over. We've got The Producers, which I just think is one of the funniest shows ever. Brilliant. Then you've got Hairspray, which is one of the most fun shows ever. And then there's things like Thoroughly Modern Millie. It's just opened here, and you've got Gypsy that may come across. All these new shows that are big money shows that they would need somebody like you to be in.
But it would have to be the right role. I don't think there's any of those that you mentioned that there'd be something that would be right for me in it. The Producers I saw, and I loved the movie anyway. I thought that they outdid themselves with the stage show. It was hysterically funny. Whether it'll translate over here, I don't know, because it's very Broadway, New York Jewish humour, and very American. Whether that will work here and coach parties will want to come, I don't know. I hope so, but I don't think there's a role there for me.
Okay, so is there a role anywhere in musical theatre now? I mean, you've done the best, really.
Well, Auntie Mame really is the only one that comes to
see that, actually. I think you in a frock, I think, would do very well.
Okay, actually, I was thinking what would be good for Antonio and I to do, because we were talking about an idea for a musical, and we came up with the idea of Sugar. You know, the Some Like It Hot. The musical based on Something Like It Hot. That would be quite a fun idea. I'd quite like to do something like that. Yeah, that'd be quite a nice idea.
Where do we see you next, then? Because you've just done this amazing
Probably on
tour.
Crime Watch.
Well,
I don't know.
Can we have an exclusive? I need a way of selling this programme. I mean, there's so many shows out there. What do you want to do? Is there any ambition? Do you want to move more into TV, film, stay in the musicals? What do you want to do now? Because you've done so much.
I want to keep doing what I do. I want to be able to go in the studio and make records. I want to go on the stage when there are good shows for me to be in. Just carry on doing what I do, and for people to still keep enjoying it.
Andrew Lloyd Webber once said, he just goes on stage and delivers. That has to be one of the greatest compliments ever, really.
Yeah, I think he meant pizza.
Margarita, or what do you like?
An American hot.
I think so. We've got to say goodbye there. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Michael Ball is such a huge star, and big in America as well. I mean, not many people do that. Congratulations on that. Congratulations on all your roles in Chitty, and amazing back catalogue of albums, and this new one is really excellent, and it's really different. You must go and buy it. Michael Ball, A Love Story. And we'll end with a piece of music that I just think is Michael Ball, really. Love Changes Everything is the song that everybody just loves to hear you sing. Does that insult you, compliment you? How do you feel about that?
It's the best compliment, and I owe a lot to that song, so it's a pleasure to hear it again.
We're not talking about your mortgage, are we?
No, we're not. I made nothing out of it.
Michael Ball, it's a real pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Pleasure.